Hey everyone, Tanya Brewington here. I want to talk again about healing from painful mom relationships. And if you're on this channel, then what you'll know is that when I started, I actually started talking about healing toxic mom relationships. And let me tell you what I did with the toxic mom and why I changed course. Because what I know about dealing with moms and dealing with your relationship with mom is that everything that you do is not toxic. Everything that your mom does is not toxic. And let me give you an example of what I mean by that. There are times when if let's go back to when you first started learning how to drive, right? The reality is before I even knew what driving was, and I was watching people who drove, what I thought was driving was just putting your hands on the steering wheel and doing this. And if you're a kid, this is probably what you think driving is. You're just doing like this. You're just doing like this, right? And then what you don't realize, and then every once in a while I would do this, and I would play in driving, I would do this. But what you don't realize until you start driving is that when you're driving, it involves so many things. You have to think about your surroundings. You have to think about putting your hands on the steering wheel and steering and guiding the car. You have to pay attention to what other cars are doing. You also have to do the stop, the gas and the brake and all this. And you have to do it all at the same time because you have to be very much aware of what's going on at any given time. And what I'll say about moms is that oftentimes we assume that the relationship that we may consider toxic or the relationship that we might consider painful is one where when you look at it, if you can step back far enough and get your emotions out of it, you may realize that your mother wasn't actually toxic per se. Your mother might just have been someone who didn't know what she was doing. Now, this is particularly true in my estimation for young women who are having children when they're young, like they're teenagers and they're having children, and they don't always know what's going on. From the perspective of a kid, it might look like parenting or mothering looks like you just hold the baby, you feed it. But then you have to deal with all the other things that go along with it, right? You have to feed, you have to clean, you have to change, you have to guide, you have to nurture, you have to deal with all of the emotions. There's a lot that goes into the process of parenting, more so than just feeding and combing hair and putting on pretty clothes, right? There's a lot more to it. And so one of the reasons I changed from toxic moms to painful mother relationships is because you might have actually had a painful mother relationship, but it doesn't necessarily mean that your mom was toxic, right? Now, there are mothers who are actually neglectful. And what that means is, in my opinion, that might feel toxic, but it means that they just didn't make the time for you. They just weren't willing to invest any time in you because it took away from whatever it was they had going on in their lives. And it could also be that your mother just wasn't available. And it could be that she had something going on mentally. It could be that she just wasn't available because, again, very much like neglect in some ways, because neglect is I'm going to talk about it as a benign kind of thing, but also as a toxic thing, because it goes both ways. But if your mother is not available, she might have felt that she needed time to herself, that she couldn't invest all of her time and give everything to you. And you felt like she wasn't available. She wasn't the mother who gave you what you needed. And that's a valid feeling. It's valid for you to feel that way. It's valid. It's an understandable response to someone who decides not to invest their time or their energy or their effort in you, in your well-being, especially if the only thing they were able to do for you is to feed you, get you clothes, get you to school, and they felt like, hey, I did what I was supposed to do. And the truth is, there is a generation of people who felt like as long as you were fed, you were clothed as a baby, as long as you were clean, you weren't wet, I did what I needed. But, in your case, you might not have gotten any nurturing. You weren't held, you weren't cuddled, you weren't, no one acted like they cared about you. Your mom may not have, comforted you. that is neglect in a way. It's a lack of availability. It truly is a lack of sensitivity to who you are and what you need as a human being. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the intention was to be toxic. Then you have mothers who are not there physically, just physically. And that happens, first of all, when your mother dies, particularly if it happened when you were young. She couldn't mother, she couldn't parent you if she wasn't there. And so while that feels hurtful, it really is a painful situation. It's not toxic, right? It's just a matter of, due to death, she could not do what she wanted to do, or what she might have done had she been alive. And then you have mothers who are not there because they walk away from their children. And that, when I've worked with clients like that, and it creates such a void in the lives of these children, because they're children who are now adults, because they always think that there's something wrong with who they are because their mother didn't stick around for them. And then nowadays, in particular, with the explosion of women who are incarcerated, you have mothers who aren't there because they are physically restrained. They're physically incarcerated. They cannot be there for you. And so that becomes an issue as well. It may feel like the same thing with someone who walks away, that you know your mother's there, but she's not there because she's incarcerated. And you may have your feelings about that. You may feel like your mother doesn't love you. That is a very real response and a very realistic expectation. And then you have mothers who are not neglectful. They are available. They are there. They may be overly available. And these are what I call smother mothers. And to you, on some level, you may feel that, especially when you were growing up, you might have felt like that was the best thing possible. Your mother did everything with you. She was always there. She was there with your friends. She hung out with you and your friends. She was your best friend. She did this. She did that. She was always in your life. She inserted herself in your life in a way that was overly friendly, in a way, because it kind of crossed the bounds between mothering or parenting and friendship. And she jumped into that lane. And now what you're finding is that everything that happens in your life, your mother feels like she has to be a part of it. Now you're finding that instead of being able to have a life of your own, doing what you need to do, your mother feels like she should be part of it too. And to the degree that she may not have her own life, and she may not be able to do what she needs to do with her own life because she's so invested and she's so heavily immersed in your life. Now, what I will tell you is that is a form of, it is still a painful mother relationship, especially when you're trying to extract yourself, or you're trying to actually stand up and be self-identified. That can become difficult because your mother may feel like, oh, after all I've done for you, how could you feel like you need to walk away from me? And for so many people, that becomes confusing, and it's hurtful and it's harmful. Now, even though I'm not calling this toxic moms, I am going to talk about the fact that there are, in fact, toxic moms. And these mothers are destructive in what they do. And some of them know that they're being destructive. Some may not be aware so much. They know they're doing things, but they're doing it because that's just how they treat people. That's just how they are with people. And you're just another person, right, to them. And so these mothers are the mothers who treat you like you're an enemy to them. This may be a mother who is jealous of you because you might be considered pretty. You might be someone who is smart, and your mother wasn't always considered smart. Or you might be someone who is really elevated and elevating in a specific way that your mother just can't get with. Maybe for whatever reason, you and your father are close, or maybe you look like your father, and your mother just can't bear to look at you because you look so much like your father, and he's not there. He left you with her, or he wasn't involved. He didn't want to have a relationship with her, or whatever the case may be. In that case, you may have mothers who are jealous of you, and they treat you like you are an enemy, and not like you are their daughter, but you could be one of their arch enemy people, these adults who they know. They could be abusive. These are mothers who are abusive, not disciplining you, which might mean you're spanking, whatever. But I mean like abusive, as in you have scars, as in you are having broken bones, broken whatever. That's abuse as opposed to discipline. There's a difference. There's a big difference. And I know some people believe you don't need to discipline children, don't hit them, whatever. That may be the situation for you, but there is a fine line. And actually, I don't even think it's a fine line, but there's a line between abuse and there's a line between discipline, and they are totally, totally different. You may also have mothers who are abusive. That's physical. You may have mothers who are emotionally abusive, meaning they take every chance they get to break you down, to tear you down, to make sure you think you're not nothing. You don't think this, you don't have that, you're no good. All these things that become forms of emotional abuse because it's verbal. A lot of it is verbal, or they're treating you like you are beneath them. You're less than worthy of having anyone value who you are as a person. And that is emotional abuse. And then you have, so it's spiritual. It could be spiritual in some cases, but that is also a form of abuse. If you're constantly told about how bad you are, you're all these other things. I don't want to get into that too much because I know that can be touchy with people when they're talking about spiritual abuse. But then you have also mothers who are verbally abusive, they are emotionally abusive, they're physically abusive, and or they're putting their children, and specifically I'm talking about daughters, in precarious situations where the children are being used for purposes that children are not here for. So you may be a child who's dealt with sexual assault or sexual abuse of some sort. It could be from anywhere, anyone. It could be from your mom, which could happen. It could be from your mom's boyfriend or your mom's girlfriend. It could be from another parent. It could be from someone else. They know about it and they do nothing about it. So this is someone who's not protective of who you are. It could be that you're getting beat up by your mom's boyfriend or whoever, and your mother doesn't do anything to stop it or to protect you or to defend you, which again is another form of abuse, because then you don't trust your mother. This role that mothers have, your mother has chosen not to operate in that space. And so when you're looking back, if you happen to look at some of the previous videos that I have on here, you're going to see healing toxic mom relationships. But I'm going to tell you the reason I'm not so interested in talking about toxic moms is because with the people that I work with, the people that I talk to, all moms are not toxic. Even if you have a difficult, challenging, dysfunctional relationship with your mother, it's not always because it's toxic in the way that I just described toxic. In some cases, it's painful because you did not get from your mother the things that you wanted to get, the things that you needed to get, and the things that mothers are kind of tasked with or assumed to be able to give to their children. And that's the love, that's the nurturing, that's the helping to shape your sense of who you are as a person, starting from the time that you are an infant all the way up until the time you are a teenager and beyond. That's what most mothers who are not in the space of being painful mothers do. And so if you didn't have that kind of relationship, then I would say not necessarily toxic, because I talked about the ways that she could not have been toxic, but it still is painful to you. And so there are toxic moms. There are moms who create painful situations with their children, in particular daughters, whether they're toxic or not. And that's what I'm talking about. And that's why I changed the name to Healing Painful Mother Relationships, Healing Painful Mom Relationships. And so with that, I want to say, hey, I'll see you on the next video. I look forward to talking to you then. Take care. Bye.